My name is Claire, and I had ironed my simple black dress twice, more for courage than for creases. The hotel ballroom gleamed with marble and glass, a mirror made for power and praise. Waiters drifted by with trays of champagne. The tables were iced with white linens, tall lilies, and name cards that pretended we all belonged. A quartet played something gentle, the kind of song that smiles without teeth. I stood at the edge of the room, close enough to be seen, far enough to breathe. My father, Richard, was at the center under a chandelier, shaking hands with board members as if he had built the building himself. I knew the script. Walk in, show respect, stay quiet, leave with grace. But the script tore as soon as the whispers started. They didn't bother to lower their voices much. A man behind me said, "That's Richard's daughter. Always restless." And a woman answered with a soft laugh, "She can't even satisfy him. He deserves better heirs." The words slid like oil, and I felt them on my skin. I didn't turn around. I looked up at the chandelier and counted the crystal drops to anchor myself. 1, 2, 3, and then I stopped counting because I was not a child, and numbers would not save me tonight. My sister, Emily, swept toward me in a dress the color of new money. Mark trailed close, her husband and constant chorus. She glanced at my shoes, my plain clutch, my face. Her smile was thin. "Security," she said, with a lazy flick of her hand, as if she were ordering a refill. "Remove this useless woman." She said it to a guard who had done nothing to me, and he blinked, confused. Mark chuckled, the low mean sound he keeps for sport. Heads turned. It was a good line if your heart is made of brass. I heard another laugh echo, and another. The quartet did not falter. The room swallowed me like a polite mouth swallowing a bitter pill. I looked for my father. He was shaking hands with James from the board and nodding at Olivia from legal. He saw me. At least I think he did. But his eyes moved on so quickly it felt like I had only imagined the glance. He lifted his glass for a toast, and the chandelier light flashed on the rim. He said something about performance and grit. He said something about family. I put my glass down on a passing tray because I did not trust my hands to hold it without breaking. A server asked if I needed anything. I said, "No, thank you," because I was raised to be kind even when I'm cut. My mind ran ahead of me as it always does when I am hurt. It ran down the list of accounts my father insisted we share for ease, the credit card that was just in case, the travel file with family trips in shouting caps. It remembered the number of my stake in his company, a number that had sounded unreal the first time I heard it, like a song from a radio far away. $17 million. A ribbon tied around me in the name of belonging. I smiled at the server, nodded to a woman who used to pinch my cheek at summer picnics, and walked toward the balcony doors. Each step felt like a decision. I was not running. I was leaving. The balcony opened like a relief valve. Cool night air slid into my lungs, and the city stretched beneath me, not caring who I was. Cars hummed along the avenue. The Hudson was a darker ribbon beyond the rooftops, smooth and sure. I thought of my small blue house in Brooklyn, how the entry smells of coffee and lemon cleaner, how the couch bears the shape of my naps, how the map of America above my desk bristles with pins, Boston, Chicago, Austin, Seattle. Each place a reminder that I can move and still be myself. I thought of Europe, too, for a second, the semester I spent in London learning to say Q and count in pounds, but the image faded like a postcard. My life, my fight, and my future were here. I did not give the room a final look. I did not seek out Emily's triumphant smirk or Mark's small, mean eyes. I did not try to catch my father's attention. I slipped back through the ballroom's edge and walked to the elevators with my head steady and my steps quiet. The guard who had been addressed earlier met my eyes and looked away, ashamed. It was a kind of apology, and it helped. The elevator chimed. A couple rushed in with me, minted in glitter and laughter. They smiled at their reflections and at each other, not at me. The doors closed. The car descended. I watched the numbers change and felt the floor under my feet, solid, simple, real. Outside, Manhattan air met me with that late-night mix of exhaust and promise. A driver opened a town car door and asked, "Need a ride?" I said, "Yes, to Brooklyn, please," and gave him my street. The seat was soft, the kind of leather you notice because you need to notice something that won't wound you. We slid past the river, past the lights, past a life that had never truly been mine. The driver asked if I'd had a good night. "I had an honest night," I said. He laughed in a warm way, and we did not speak again. I paid in dollars, tipped well because I always do, and stepped onto my block. My house stood steady, blue against blue, with the small brass numbers that have guided me home when nights ran too long. I unlocked the door and paused on the threshold, like a swimmer at the pool's edge. Then I went in, shutting the noise of the city behind me. The quiet settled like a blanket. My living room was just as I'd left it. The plant by the window, the shoes by the mat, the little framed photo of my mother smiling into sun. The map of America watched me like a firm friend. I set my clutch on the entry table and exhaled. I made tea because I wanted my hands to do something loving. Steam rose like a small prayer. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys. I heard the ballroom in my head, the soft, cruel line, restless daughter, and the harder one, useless woman, and I felt a click inside, not loud, not violent, but final. I wasn't shaking. My breath was even. I logged in. The screens greeted me with crisp blue banners, and I moved through them with a calm I had not known I owned. I canceled the joint credit card with 3 clean clicks. I cut the standing bookings for the trips that had always been described as family, as if the word could hide the cost of my dignity. Napa disappeared. A ski weekend in Colorado vanished. A summer rental in the Hamptons, a glossy promise I had not asked for, went dark on the calendar. Then I called my broker. He answered on the second ring, quick and alert. "Claire," he said, and paused because he heard something in my voice. "What do you need?" "My stake," I said. "Sell all of it." There was a short silence, not shocked, just careful. "Your stake is at $17 million, he said, as if I might not know the weight I was lifting. "I know," I said. "Sell." He asked me to confirm. I confirmed. Documents bloomed on my screen, clean contracts with numbers that used to make my heart pound. Tonight they felt like doors. I read, signed, and saved. When I hit the last button, the room did not tilt. The world did not end. My tea had cooled. I drank it anyway. 10 minutes later the first call came. Then the second. The third. I watched the screen fill. Dad. Emily. Mark. James. Olivia. The board line. Unknown numbers. A drumroll of demand. In a rush it rose to 56 calls, stacked like dominoes, one on the other. Messages burst in. "What are you doing?" "Come back." "Be reasonable. Do not make a scene." It made me smile because I had left that room in perfect silence. My street was quiet. A car door slammed outside. Heavy steps took the stairs to my stoop. A firm knock, not frantic, not gentle, landed on my door. I put the empty cup in the sink and walked to the entry. I looked through the peephole. My father stood there, tie crooked now, hair a little wild as if he had finally moved fast without a plan. The hallway light fell across his shoulder. He lifted his hand and knocked again. "Claire," he called, his voice low. "Open up." I set my palm on the wood. The whole house felt steady under it. I slid back the first lock. I left the chain on. I opened the door as far as the chain allowed and met his eyes. The city breathed behind him. I had never felt taller in my life. I kept the chain on the door. My father, Richard, filled the gap with his shoulders, with his name, with every year I had spent trying to please a room that always wanted more. "Claire," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." The hallway light turned the edge of his suit pale. I could smell rain and the city. Behind me, my small blue house waited, steady as a good friend. The kettle clicked in the kitchen, done reheating the tea I had already finished. I let the silence answer him. It was the first clean answer I had given in years. "I'm fine," I said at last. "Go home, Dad." Not until we fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said. There's only the truth. I closed the door, soft but final, then slid the second lock. I did not lean against the wood like in the movies. I stood up straight because my spine had been practicing for this moment all night. His shadow moved under the crack, then withdrew. I heard his steps on the stairs, then the outer door open and close. I stayed still for a breath, then another, listening for the return. There was only the hum of the refrigerator and the far-off music of New York, that tireless song of America. I went back to my desk. The map above it showed all the pins I had pressed into my life. Boston, Chicago, Denver, Seattle, and the one in London for my months there, a small light from Europe that once taught me how to be on my own in a new place. The laptop screen glowed, with the last confirmation from my broker. The figure sat there, $17,000,000, no longer a leash, just a number with air around it. An email had arrived from Olivia in legal, polite, brisk, alert. "Call me when you can," she wrote. I typed back. "Tomorrow morning works. I'm home in Brooklyn." I signed with my name and nothing else. I did not add "your daughter" or "family." Those titles had been used as chains. I was not putting them back on. Then I opened a note and made a list. I called the page ledger because I needed a word that meant weight and count and also balance. I wrote, "Locks change tomorrow. New accountant. Solo card confirmed. Emergency fund, 6 months." I added consulting rates on the next line. $600 an hour domestic, £600 if I happen to be in London. I smiled at that, not because of the money, but because of the clean edge of the decision. I added road trip to the bottom because a list needs a hope to point to. Boston for coffee with Hannah. Chicago to see Grace. Back home. My phone buzzed again, a smaller storm now. Texts from Emily stacked on the screen. "What did you do?" Then, "You are hurting Dad." Then, "Mark says you'll regret this." I typed and erased, then set the phone face down. I do not answer people who practice cruelty as if it were a sport. Instead, I sent one message to James from the board. "My sale is final. Please update the register. If Dad needs advice, he can hire me." He replied with a single line, "Understood," which is the best reply a person like him can send at midnight. I rinsed my cup and watched water bead on the porcelain. Little ordinary moments felt like proof I could live without the roar of a ballroom. I walked through the rooms of my house. Living room, kitchen, the small study that used to be a dining nook, the bedroom where the window faces a tree. I checked the latches and the lamp cords. The plant by the window needed water. I gave it a drink like a promise. My home looked back at me, calm and sure. It was not large, but it was mine, and it held my shape. On my nightstand, I kept a shoebox that had more life than it looked. Inside were notes. A postcard from Boston where Hannah had written, "You always were braver than you knew." A train stub from Washington, a receipt from a roadside diner outside Chicago, where the pie was better than the view. A folded scrap with a sentence from my mother's careful hand. "Keep receipts, keep boundaries, keep going." I set the scrap on top of the box and pressed my palm over it, like a seal. Before sleep, I called a friend who always answers, David, who lives in San Francisco but keeps New York hours in his heart. He picked up on the second ring. "Are you okay?" he asked, not what happened, which is why I love him. "I sold," I said. "All of it." "Good," he said, as if I had finally told the weather the truth. "Do you need anything?" "I need a locksmith at 9, I said. "And I need someone to remind me in the morning that I didn't dream this." "I'll text you at 7, he said. "And if you want, I'll fly over for the weekend." Dollars well spent. "I'm okay," I said. "But thank you." We said goodnight the way people do who have stood in hard winds together. In bed, I lay on my side and watched the streetlight draw a small square on the ceiling. A car passed, then quiet. Somewhere a neighbor laughed, and a dog collar chimed, and the city breathed like a living thing. I thought of my father on the curb outside his car, thinking about the door that stayed chained. I thought of Emily in her glass tower of a condo, and of Mark counting favors like chips on a table. I thought of myself in my blue house, not a title, not a pawn, not restless, but ready. Sleep took me cleanly, the way a tide lifts a boat. When morning came, I would buy new locks, write clear emails, and set my first invoice template with my name at the top. For now, I let the quiet prove what the party never could. I belong to myself, here in America, under my own roof. Morning found me steady. The locksmith changed my locks by 9, receipts signed in dollars. At 10, Dad returned, hat in hand on my Brooklyn stoop. I led him into the living room, but not into my decisions. He apologized, not for the party's cruelty, but for letting it name me. I brewed coffee and laid out new terms, respect in every room, work only as a consultant at my rate, boundaries that hold. He nodded, age showing in the set of his shoulders. When he left, the house felt taller. I opened my ledger, circled road trip, and felt the day begin. By noon I had answered Olivia's email with a firm schedule, a call at 2, an outline of consulting scope, and a draft engagement letter. I wrote my rate, $600 an hour, on the first line, then added travel billed at cost, dollars or pounds depending on where I was. It felt like writing my name for the first time. The map of America above, my desk watched over me, pins bright as small suns. I added a note to visit London in winter for a week of walking and thinking, a quiet loop to Europe that wouldn't tangle me in anyone else's story. The doorbell rang. I checked the camera, Emily, alone. I opened the door, no chain this time, and let her into the living room. She glanced around my blue house, as if it had learned a new language overnight. "You look calm," she said, and sounded almost surprised to find I hadn't dissolved. "I am," I said. "Coffee." She shook her head. "Mark says you burned the bridge." "I sold a stake," I said. The bridge was made of matches anyway. She stood by the window, fingers worrying the strap of her purse. "Dad asked me to apologize," she said, and for once the words landed as real. "I was cruel. I was showing off. I thought power meant being louder than you." She looked at the plant I had watered in the night. It turns out power might be this. Quiet. I let the silence sit between us, clean and useful. "I'm not coming back to the old role," I said. "If the company needs me, it will be on paper, on terms, with dignity." She nodded. "I get it. Then, Mark won't." "That's not my job to fix," I said. "Tell him he doesn't get a vote in my life." Emily traced the rim of the windowsill. "Do you remember the road trip to Chicago we planned and never took? We were supposed to split gas and motels, and then Dad booked that resort and called it a family investment." "I remember," I said, and I could almost see the long road opening, the taste of diner coffee, the city rising at the edge of the lake. "I'm taking it now, Boston, Chicago, back to New York. I'll send you a postcard." Her laugh was small, but real. "Send me too," she said, and she hugged me before she left. Quick, awkward, human. At 2 sharp, Olivia and I spoke. She was crisp as winter air. "Claire," she said, "I've drafted the consulting agreement. Scope limited to strategic reviews, quarterly meetings, no implied fiduciary duty. Payment net 15. A retainer of $30,000 to be replenished when it dips below $10,000. "Good," I said. "Add a clause about respectful conduct in meetings. If anyone crosses that line, I leave and invoice the hour." "I like the clarity," she said. "Also, Richard asked if you'd consider a statement to calm investors." "Here's my statement," I said. "I sold because choice is good governance. I'm available for hire because expertise has value. I wish the company well." Olivia exhaled, and I could hear the smile. "That will do." After the call, I packed a weekend bag, jeans, a navy sweater, a notebook, a map, and a shoebox with my mother's slip of paper on top. Keep receipts, keep boundaries, keep going. I watered the plan again, just because it calmed me. I locked the door and checked it twice, the new keys bright in my palm like coins. Down the block, Mrs. Carter was clipping Winston's leash. "Road trip?" she asked. "Boston first," I said. "Then Chicago. Back by Monday." "Bring me a story," she said, and I promised I would. On the subway to Penn Station, my phone pinged. A message from Dad. "Agreement reviewed. I'll sign. I'm sorry for last night. I will fix the room. Another from James. Statement received. Investors appreciate the clarity. I wrote back to my father with 2 words, thank you, because sometimes the smallest currency spends best. The train slid north. New York fell behind like a closed chapter, and the tracks stitched the distance into something I could hold. I watched the river, brown and sure, watched small towns pass like commas in a long sentence. I thought about money as a tool, not a tether, about houses that fit the shape of a life, about rooms where names are used like gifts, not weapons. I thought about America, large and plural, where a woman can redraw her map without asking permission. I thought about Europe as a place to visit, not a place to vanish into, and felt the comfort of choosing both and belonging to neither more than myself. In Boston, Hannah met me with 2 coffees and a grin. You did it, she said, handing me the hot cup like a medal. I did, I said, and felt the truth click again, steady as rail. We walked the harbor until the light thinned. I told her about the party, the chain on the door, the ledger, the rate, the terms. She told me about her own small revolutions, saying no to a title that cost too much, saying yes to a life that fit. When we parted, she pressed bills into my hand, for pie in Chicago, and I laughed and pushed them back. I'm flush, I said, but I'll send you a receipt anyway. Back on the train, night pooled on the glass. I took out my notebook and wrote a single line across the top of a clean page. Freedom is a contract I sign with myself. Then I closed my eyes and let the wheels carry me forward, not as a daughter people whisper about, but as Claire, the woman who set her rate, chose her road, and kept her keys.